Everybody, it's Everett with Ohio for Freedom. I'm standing here in front of this really nice $1 million home located in Lebanon, Ohio. The street address is not important. It's a matter of public record that the home belongs to Darlene Bishop. Darlene Bishop does not live here. Julie Hooks, Darlene's daughter, Julie Hooks and her husband Leroy live here, and Jude Hooks lives here. Now, the reason that is important is because in December of 2024, two sweet Christian ladies were coming out of Kohl's, the clothing store, and were verbally assaulted, menaced, and threatened by Jude Hooks. And what's interesting is the language in the police report is virtually identical, like word for word, what showed up in a text message to Donnie Spence from a burner phone, and of course that ended up in that recent police report filing also. Oh, and also, we'll show you a screenshot in just a second of a text message from Julie Hooks. But the reason this is important is the lady that you're about to hear testimony from, the victim you are about to hear testimony from, is fully aware of this menacing, threatening behavior and has still chosen to come forward boldly and with grace and articulation and tell her story. By the way, this is the text message, and when the person you're just about to hear from in December of 2024 simply went to Solid Rock Church to retrieve personal belongings, this loving and kind text was sent to her: "Don't ever show your face here again." She's fully aware of this kind of behavior, but for the benefit of other victims, she's coming forward. Let's get into the interview. Here is Karen's story. Karen, thank you for being here. I know it takes a lot of courage. It's really very much appreciated. Why don't we start by, what is your why? Why are you sitting down? Why are we having this conversation today?
Well, the reason I'm having this conversation with you is because I want to raise awareness about things like this. I want for anybody else that has gone through anything like this to know that there is help and to know that they can speak out. This is not out of revenge. This is not out of spite. This is not out of unforgiveness or anything like that. This is specifically just to bring awareness for any other victim, that things have happened to, regardless of how old that the person is, and regardless of the level of things that's happened to them.
Do you think there are more victims out there related to Solid Rock?
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
If you were to put a number estimating, are we talking 1, 2, or double digits, or more than that?
If it's double digits, it would be high double digits, maybe. It could be as many as triple digits, but I don't know for sure.
Right. Where do you want to start? Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your growing up years, or maybe the years just prior to getting involved in Solid Rock? What do you think?
So I kind of left home at a young age, and so I was staying with some friends of mine, and that's how I started going to Solid Rock. Was my friend and actually her boyfriend at the time were going, and so I started to ride with them and just visit, and then eventually started coming to the church on my own.
And when you left home at an early age, and we don't have to go into a lot of detail, but was that because of an abusive background, or you just got bored, or what was it?
It was primarily due to issues with the stepdad. He was pretty dangerous, and so I had to make the decision of, protecting myself, or I might not have made it out alive.
Okay, so we're talking some pretty serious physical abuse and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you started going, attending with your friend and her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Pick up the story from there.
It took me a while to get to know everybody because I wasn't very trusting due to other things I had been through in the past. And I think, I would just sit back and watch from a distance.
Right.
And then eventually, they would come back and shake hands with people, Lawrence and Darlene. And so eventually through a couple times of meeting them that way, I started to go up and talk to Darlene. I trusted her first.
Yeah.
And then eventually in time, I trusted Lawrence Sr. And if I had to sum it up and expedite it for you even more, eventually I started working and doing multiple ministries in the church. And from there I started working for the family. I did some care for her parents, and I helped watch many of the grandchildren, and that's kind of how we all got very close.
Were you ever basically a full-time caregiver for her parents?
Yes, at one time I was. Mm-hmm.
And was that like you work an 8-hour shift and then go back to your place, or or was that on premises?
No, I was a live-in private duty caregiver.
And just to drill down a little bit, were you customarily or normally paid for that, or was it a paid position? Did they pay you what you were...
Yeah, it was a paid position, and then with me living, in the house with them, it was kind of tied into me staying there. So,
did they pay you market rate, or how did that work?
I mean, at that time, I really didn't realize what market rate was. Of course, now I do with many experience, a lot of experience in healthcare. Yeah. But no, it wasn't market rate.
Was it an hourly rate, and was it based on the number of hours you worked, or how did that work?
It seemed that it was an hourly rate, but as time went on and I thought about it more, I think it was just a set rate, and it was set that way because, I was told, because of living there, rent-free, that was kind of tied into what the amount would equal up to.
But you were there 24 hours a day?
For the most part. I started off helping somebody else, kind of relieving them. And then once I think it was noticed that was working out really well, the other girl ended up quitting, and then I kind of stepped in and was living there. And then, of course, I ended up having to find some relief in the evenings, because I needed some time for me.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, I did stay there.
Okay. And you got more involved in the church? What other things did you do for the bishops?
Well, as far as the church, I just about did it all. I've done cleaning, I was a greeter, I was in the choir, helped out with kids ministry, just about anything you name it, I did it,
Right.
And as far as for them, it was mostly, helping out with family things, helping out with the kids and her parents and things like that. And I also cleaned or did, things like that for them, so.
So you got to know the bishops and the church and their family pretty good.
Yes, yeah, I did.
Okay. Talk about being involved with Lawrence Sr.
When I first was getting to know the family, of course, I really didn't know him super well yet. But then eventually I came to trust him, and he was, almost like a father figure. And so that's kind of, how it was. It was just, as far as the interaction, it would be kind of like joking or, just funny things and things like that initially.
Right. Eventually some things got inappropriate in his behavior. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah. And it was definitely slowly enough to where it was just little things here and there. And then I would kind of question myself, like, did that really happen? No, he wouldn't do that. He's like a dad. He wouldn't. And so I would dismiss it because I thought it was an accident. He didn't mean to. I'm reading too much into it. No, he wouldn't do that.
Unfortunately, we were going to ask about some of those things, but before we go too much further, you mentioned escaping a pretty dangerous, it was pretty dangerous. That's the reason that you got out of your childhood home with your stepdad. That produces a lot of caution in somebody, maybe even some wounding, perhaps. Do you think that Darlene and Lawrence, did they pick up on that and looking back, or?
That's hard to say. They were aware of the situation. She may have been more aware than he was.
Yeah.
But, also because of that, you kind of have an additional area of street smarts that maybe most people wouldn't have. So you start to sense things, and it makes you become more cautious.
Okay. So Lawrence, little things would happen. Let's talk about that. The things that you dismissed at first. What does that mean? What does that entail?
I would say, maybe a hug was a little too long, or he would hold me a little too tight, or, maybe pat me inappropriately, just little things here and there. And it would be real quick to where when it happened, I would question that. I would think to myself, no, for sure that didn't happen. And then he would occasionally say things to me. And, there was one point in time where he tried to make me sit on his lap, and I refused to do that. I pulled away from him, and he pulled me down onto his lap, and I jerked myself back up.
What? He pulled you to his lap?
Yeah, he did.
And the hugs and so forth, was that in a work environment?
Oh, it would just be anywhere, random. It would just be, it wasn't specifically in a work environment. Now, of course, now that I realize what was happening, it was generally when, of course, Darlene wouldn't be around. And, the thing that she might not even realize even to this day is that when he would do those things and make comments to me, I would start talking about her to defend her. Once I came to a point of realizing, at first I didn't think anything, so I never said anything. But once I realized, wait, this is getting weird, and I don't like this, and it was upsetting me because I'm a very compassionate person. So my first thought was my heart hurt for her because I realized, what is he doing? And so I would tell him things, he would make a comment, and I would instantly start talking about her. She's beautiful, and she's this and that. And he didn't like when I did that. I don't know if it made him face what he was doing, which I hope it did. But, that's kind of how I tried to handle things, for a long time. But I never, ever let him get far or anything like that. I would always pull away, always stop him, find a way to stay away from him, try to avoid him, because it was very awkward, and my heart hurt for her also. But there was a fear in me of telling her anything because I thought she'd never believe me. It's just me, little old me. I felt like she would think, I'm a homewrecker, I'm lying, I'm trying to get attention, or, am I trying to do something crazy to blackmail them, things like that. So that's why I didn't tell her, because for the longest time, I dismissed it myself. And then when I realized, wait, this isn't right, I thought I could correct him on my own. Right. And not have to, and not have to hurt her, because I knew she would be hurt.
You've worked in you've had a work life for a number of years since then. Have you ever been in any other situation where anybody in the organization, especially up the chain leadership, felt liberty to do all these hugs and pats and that sort of thing?
No. No. Because now, if somebody tried something like that, I'm a lot older and wiser, and they would get put in their place really quick if so.
Were the kind of things that you experienced, in your opinion, things that would be tolerated in any kind of a professional environment?
Oh, no. No. If it was reported to HR, somebody's getting fired.
Somebody's getting fired. And forgive me for being pointed, but you said little pats. What does that mean?
When he would hug, he would, try to touch my behind and things like that. Just a quick pat.
Yeah, that's very, very, very troubling. And you would use talking about his wife, Darlene, as sort of a defense mechanism?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I meant it. I wasn't just doing it for defense. I really, really meant what I was saying. First of all, I would, pull away or push away, and let him know this is not something I like at all, and I'm not doing this. But I knew that it was going to hurt her, and out of my loyalty and love for her, on top of, ew, no, I would pull away and start talking about her and start talking about how beautiful she is and how, wonderful she is and things like that. And he really didn't like that, when I did it.
How would he react when you would use this defense mechanism?
In my opinion, he said things that would hurt her. So I never did want to say, because he would talk about how, an example, he would talk about how skinny I am. And I would say, well, she's skinny too. She's beautiful. And, I would even tell him, I want to be like her, look like her, And he would say things about her weight and stuff. Well, no, she's not, she doesn't look like she used to, or things like that. And I knew that would crush her.
He would discuss his wife's beauty or physical appearance in a critical way with you, a subordinate.
If he was doing something and I was countering that with, talking about her, because I wanted him to stop it. I wanted him to realize, what are you doing? You're going to hurt her, and you will not use me to hurt her. Because, I had such a loyalty, of course, to her. And I wouldn't want to do anything like that anyway. That's disgusting, to be honest.
Sure. Did Darlene ever end up finding out about any of this?
Yeah, she did. She did. And when she did, she called me and asked me to come over to her house. And we sat in a room. And we talked. And we both cried. And, because she asked me what happened. And I told her, and she wanted to know why had I not told her until now, and it was for the very reasons I gave you. I told her, I said, I knew you'd never believe me, and I said, I figured you'd think I was a troublemaker, or that I was trying to destroy the church, or trying to hurt the family. And at that point, she told me that this is not the first time that it happened, and that it has happened. She said there were many, many before you, and she even gave me some names of people I knew, and I was shocked, but my heart immediately turned to her, because I'm a very tender-hearted person and compassionate, and I love her. And when she started crying, telling me these things, my heart broke too. Right. And because I thought, and also at that time, my world shattered, because I had this picture in my head that they were, a happy husband and wife, they loved each other, and they, it was, they had a perfect family. And so, I was just watching and learning and, observing. And so at the very same time, I'm watching her heart break from finding out all these things. My heart's breaking for a few different reasons, because of her being upset, this happening, my whole world just blew up. Like the picture perfect world that I thought things were, I now knew that wasn't the case.
Seems like there's about 2 or 3 things here. The behaviors that you experienced from Lorna Sr., those were not behaviors that he would have displayed in front of his wife, Darlene?
No.
Okay.
There's no way.
And when eventually Darlene found out, you found out that this was like a pattern? There had been others?
Yeah. And, and she told me, I never thought he would have done anything to you. She said, I never thought he would have done anything to you. And I wasn't quite sure what to think about that at the time, because everything was happening. My mind was completely blown, but I do know that, she encouraged me to not tell. And she said, let's not tell anybody about this. She said, you don't want to be embarrassed, and and basically all the issues that it would cause. And she told me, she said, we need to take this to the grave. She said, there are just some things that we have to take to our grave. And so at that point, that's exactly, I just shelled up from there. I thought that that's what you're supposed to do, and I thought that's what she did, and I thought it's what we both had to do in order to save the ministry and the church and things like that.
The couple of things seems to be up to about 4 now. He exhibited behaviors that he would not engage in if his wife was watching, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And he was willing to talk at least somewhat degrading about his wife and even her appearance with you, correct? Then you find out, when Darlene finds out, you find out that this is not the first time. It's like something she was knowing how to deal with. And then you're told did that kind of like rock your world? You thought you had pastors, almost parent figures, and then you find this stuff out about them?
Oh, it destroyed me. I mean, what was I going to think? Like, that was all I knew. That was all I thought was good.
And then Darlene says, you will take this to the grave.
Yeah, she said, both me and her, she said, let's not talk about this, anymore. And let's forget it ever happened. And, let's take this to the grave. And, I can't remember how long it was after that, maybe a few days. After that was a cry out that we had then. And a few days later, she came to me, and I think she called me to her house again and asked me would I tape record for her. She said something to the effect of not ever being able to get evidence and asking me would I, get evidence. And I guess I didn't think about it at the time, but now I'm thinking, why would she pick me out of all these other people? And I guess maybe she knew I would be loyal and I would do it for her, out of love for her, which I did.
Was there anything that led up to, how did she find out, and how did that happen?
Because I believe he called me for something. I don't know if it was to ask me a question or something like that. And then I think it picked up on their answering machine. And it's so hard for me to go into total detail with you because things were such a long time ago. But I believe their answering machine must have picked up some of the conversation. And my guess is he must have said something stupid or, inappropriate to me. And I corrected him on it. And she heard that recording.
Okay.
And so that's, and so she called me over. Now, a few days later, after her and I's conversation, she did ask me if I would record him. And I did not want to. I was terrified. He was a big, strong man at that time, before he was sicker. I mean, he was strong enough he could have thrown me off the balcony if he wanted to, And so I was so scared to death. But she begged me and she cried, please, please. I can't get any evidence on him. Will you please do this? And she got a tape recorder that looked like a cell phone and put it in my pocket. And at that point, I went over to the barn and I basically, just made small talk with him at first to get him talking about things. And then somehow I brought the topic up. And I remember some of the main points I can remember is when I said to him, but you're a pastor. Why would you do this? Why would you do these things? And I meant what I was saying because I felt like I'm trying to get this guy to not go to hell. So I'm not just gathering information for her. I'm asking sincerely, like, why would you do this? And I said at one point, aren't you afraid to go to hell? And when I did that, his head kind of went back. It reminded me of like a bad guy, a villain in a movie. His head went back and came back forward. And when he came back forward, it was not him. He put his feet up on his desk, and he just did a slow clap. And he said, "Nice sermon. Want me to take up an offering?" And good thing I'm a pretty spunky person, and I'm not scared of anything demonic or people for the most part. And I just kept talking to him.
You said it was not him. What do you mean by that?
Because when he came back forward, it was almost like a spirit had manifested, to be honest. You know, I'm not new to being a Christian, and I've seen things before. And, you know, a person's countenance can change when there are things that are not so good going on. And that was probably the first time I ever saw that.
Did you see a change in the look of his eyes?
Yes, that was exactly where it was. Exactly where it was. And the sarcasm, I knew I was dealing with a spirit when he was very sarcastic in the look in his eyes. I knew, okay, I know who I'm talking to now. And so I finished that conversation with him. I can't even remember the rest of it. That was just a main thing that I do remember because it was so creepy. But I do remember as I was walking out, he did a very similar thing that she did. And that was begging me not to tell. You know, begging me, please don't tell anybody, it will destroy the church. He said it will take down a dynasty.
He used the word dynasty.
Yeah, it will take down a dynasty. He said it will ruin everything. It'll ruin the family, the ministry. And so I walked out of there being a young girl thinking, oh my God, I don't want to ruin everything. And I carried that on my shoulders forever. And so many people and so many comings and goings and anything that I did and helped them with, I just had to do the best I could to forget it.
I feel like I got another list that you've created, or the discussion has created. So Darlene wanted you to do something you really didn't want to do with the recording.
Well, yeah, I was scared.
And then you were physically, you said he was you were frightened. It scared you to the way that he might react.
Yeah, that I wasn't sure how he was going to react, and so it wasn't a very fun thing to do.
And Darlene put you in that position.
Yeah, I would have to say she did. I don't know if she made an assumption that he wouldn't hurt me, but then when you think about it, she also told me, I never thought he would do anything to you. So she made an assumption before that he wouldn't try to do anything inappropriate, and he did. So I don't know what she was thinking about sending me over there either. I don't know if she was just so, at that point, so distraught that she was only thinking about getting that evidence or what. To this day, I wouldn't know. All I know is that I did it. She was crying, and my heart went out for her because she was crying.
Yeah.
And she begged me to do it. And so, scared, with my palms sweating, and I was shaking, I did it.
And then, on top of that, do you feel like you saw, demonic manifestation through him?
Yeah, I don't question that at all. Yeah. I've seen things before, not necessarily with him, but, if I've been around church a long time, so I've seen things and I know the difference. And that was a one time that I know that I saw that. He was definitely mocking me.
Did you get the recording?
Yes, I did.
Did Darlene hear it?
I would have to say yes, because I took it over to her. And then, maybe a few days later, he came knocking on my apartment door because I lived in a little apartment on the property at that time.
I'm going to interrupt you. I know this is a very important story, but if she heard the recording, would she have heard the incident that you described? What was it? nice sermon, I'll take an offering. She would have heard all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And you might think that if somebody's spiritually discerning, they would have detected the same things that you detected.
She would have to. You know, being married to him as long as she has been, with, you know, her telling me that things have happened to other people. And my guess would be she has confronted it several times with him. So she has had to have seen that.
Please continue, I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify that. So what happened? It sounds like you're getting to something that's a little bit of a nail biter.
Yeah. So the door that I had on the little apartment that I stayed in it was kind of stained glass, some of it. So I put...
And the apartment was located where? I don't think we said.
The apartment was located in the front of their barn on their property. Now, because the way that was set up is it was a business in the front and a barn in the back. You know, so there would be a couple of apartments, you know, people would come and stay, buying, selling, trading horses from all over the country.
Yeah.
And so I was in one of those. So the doors were wood, but they were also stained glass. So I hung a little curtain over it, you know, for privacy. But there was about this much you could see at the bottom. And so I, of course, had stayed out of church probably a couple of days after all that. It was traumatizing. And I remember it was dark, and he started pounding on my door. And I, of course, was like, yeah, no, I won't be answering that. And I looked, and I could see his dress pants, like about this much of his dress pants and church shoes. So at this point in time, I can't remember if it was before or after church, but I would have to assume it was around a church time, and I wasn't going.
Right.
And he started pounding on my door. And so I was afraid he would see me. So I pulled my feet up onto the couch and tucked into a ball and waited for him to go away because I didn't want him to see me. And then I was scared. I had a huge front bay window, so I was scared then he was going to look in the window and see me. And so I just didn't move. But I could hear him outside my door, and he said, she knows everything. She knows everything. He said, I don't know how she found out everything. He said, I think she bugged my office. And I'm thinking, yep, I'm the biggest bug you've ever had in that office, you know. And he said, you know, she's really mad at me. He said, she's calling me a pedophile. She's, you know, not letting me around the grandchildren. You know, she doesn't even want to be in the same room as me. And this is completely awkward and disgusting for me. But, you know, he made a comment, you know, he said, you know, I have needs. I'm like, ugh, I don't need to hear about that. And
that was in this exchange.
Yes, where he's pounding on the door. He's call me on my cell phone, call me on my cell phone. I never said a word.
Is he saying that in a soft tone of voice?
No, it was not. It was not. He was frantic. And it was loud. And I would say at some points even yelling, because he knew I was in there. There's no way in the world I was coming out.
And I appreciate how awkward that is. I really do. But so he's yelling, trying to yell through the glass, I have needs. That actually happened?
Yeah, that was one thing that he said. And that completely grossed me out, of course. So after he finally left, I made a phone call to one of my friends. And this again comes into where street smarts comes into play. And I had her come and pick me up. And I did not want either of them to know I was leaving. So we literally turned her headlights off and rolled quietly down the driveway and turned the headlights on after we left. And at that point, I probably stayed gone for about a week. And Darlene called my cell phone repeatedly, and I did not answer because I was so upset. I wasn't ready to talk, and I didn't want to talk about anything else at that time. And she even called different ones of my friends to try to call me, to get me to call her. I wasn't doing it. Probably after a week of time, I did finally call her back. And the conversation, I definitely raised my voice at her this time because I was upset. I can't remember all of the conversation, but the points I can remember is I told her, she said, why didn't you tell me, you know, certain things, you know, about the situation? And I said, because you don't listen. And she said, yes, I do. And I screamed. I said, you do not listen. And I was raising my voice at that point. But by the time that conversation ended, I think everything was smoothed over and okay. And then for the second time, she said, okay, let's not talk about this no more. She said, let's not talk about this no more. This is it. Let's just forget this. We'll just act like it never happened. And so from that point, I didn't ever talk about it again. It took many, many years for me to finally do it.
Kind of speechless here, Karen. You said that Darlene was like a mother to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you were close to her,
Mm-hmm.
and you tried to protect her. Forgive me for asking, but did she ever say anything demeaning to you, like about your appearance or anything like that?
At the time, I didn't realize it was demeaning until God put me with some people that are like family that taught me what normal really is. And I didn't realize that's what it was, but I thought it was just critiquing, trying to show me how to look better or, do better. Beauty tips is what I thought it was. But, I would be told things about, even how to hold my hands, how to do my makeup, my hair, that my eyes and my hair are my best features, things about weight, paying attention to that. And so I just thought that's all it was. Yeah, I didn't, at the time, I just thought, oh, she's telling me how to look better. So
Did she ever insult your appearance?
I would have to say yes, and it's hard for me to recall certain things that were said because it was a long time ago. And at the time, I didn't realize that's what it was. But now, of course, I know the difference.
I mean, did she ever tell you were too tall, too thin, too this, too that?
Yeah, there were things about being too tall, things about fixing my makeup or doing things differently than how I did it, or, fixing my hair, and things like that. But again, I just didn't know. I thought she was just trying to tell me how to look better.
You said that she was like a mother figure to you. Did you ever share with her, like, your desire to someday marry, have kids?
No, oh yeah, she knew. Absolutely, I did.
And she encouraged you in that direction?
Well, I mean, they tried to, occasionally set me up with some people that just no for so many reasons. And as I got older, then it was kind of even more expressed, because I was, getting older. And there was at one point where she said to me that I needed to hurry up. She said, because if you have a baby this late in age, she said it could end up mentally retarded.
She said that?
Yeah. It crushed me. Like, it hurt really bad.
A little speechless here. So, a lot of people would say, well, when this happened with Lawrence, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just get out? What would you say to people that would ask a question like that?
Well, if they would ask a question like that, first of all, I would ask them right back, what would you have done if you were in my shoes and you didn't really particularly have a certain place to go? It was also tied to my employment, my church, everything I knew. And another reason is, on top of those things, for the longest time, I questioned it. What would they do if somebody that they thought was like a dad, or at least a father figure, started to do things here and there? You're going to want to think the best of somebody. You're not going to want to sit here and think, wow, what a slime ball he is. No, you don't want to think that. You don't want to think that about your pastor. So for the longest time, I dismissed it because I thought, no, this can't be happening. And of course, when she knew, I at that point thought that she busted his tail enough to where he would leave me alone and never try anything again. So then I felt like, that I didn't have to particularly run off because I thought, he knew better. That he wouldn't do anything. And so, of course, at some point after that, well, it took me a while to want to go back to church. I really didn't want to. But, that was all I knew. And, she wanted me to come back. And I knew that when I did, I was going to face being hated. I felt a lot of shame because I didn't know who all knows, who all has been told. Have they told different members of their family that go there? And, she had told me that she didn't tell anybody, none of the kids or anything. And she did not want me to tell Lawrence Jr. at all. And so I did reluctantly go back to church. And I sat there with a lot of anxiety because he was sitting up on the stage. And it was very hard because I knew he hated me. And I had a favorite worship spot that I'd had since maybe 17, and until I ended up in the choir. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to let him run me out of my worship spot. This is my spot, and I'm going back to my worship spot. And it was, kind of somewhere close to the stage on the side. And so many times I got glares and things like that to where I learned how to shut my eyes during worship. And that way I could focus on the Lord. And not think anything, not feel anything, just worship the Lord.
You're in a worship service, you're in the choir, you're helping lead the congregation in worship, and you have to shut your eyes as a protection against your perpetrator.
When I first started shutting my eyes, it was when I was down on the floor worshiping, And eventually I did join the choir. But that had become a habit at that point to shut my eyes a lot so that I could just focus everything else out.
Would Lawrence Sr. ever try to make eye contact or send some kind of a nonverbal message during service?
He either didn't want to look at me at all, or if he did, the looks weren't nice. And probably even years later, I remember going over to, I didn't ever want to run into him. And we had Sunday school classes in the next building. And I was trying my best to just go back to normalcy. And I didn't want to have fear and stop everything. And I wanted to go back to my Sunday school class and things like that. So I remember I was walking over to the other building, and I ended up behind him. And you talk about your heart beating out of your chest and tensing up because you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But I thought, I'm going to my class anyway. And so I was behind him. And I remember even what he was wearing that day. And I opened the door for him. I was trying to break the ice as a gesture. And he just glared at me. And I just looked at him and I said, I forgive you.
Wow.
And when I did that, he looked at me like, the look was like almost like die. And I just looked right back at him, and he walked through the door. And I had to walk behind him all the way up the stairs to our Sunday school class in awkward silence. It was like I was in mental shock, that he didn't really say anything back, and he was just complete, like the look on his face. But something in me knew that I needed to tell him that because I really did forgive him, and that was just it was a release, because I had a feeling not only was that the right thing to do, but I wasn't sure the direction his health and things like that were going to go, and I wanted to make sure that was said and released before anything happened.
Wow. You got that information, the recording for Darlene. Did she ever use that to like an intervention to stop, or did she just...
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. I mean, she could have, but not that I know of. The only thing that I know is that she definitely confronted him about it, because he came over freaking out, not knowing how she knew everything. How did she find out everything? she yelled at him, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think in my mind at that time, I thought, well, if she did all that, he's going to stop, and, this isn't going to happen again.
Did he continue to be on the platform, and to the rest of the congregation, everything looks like it always did?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Does Darlene Bishop like to cover things up?
Yes. This is just my personal opinion.
She said take it to the grave.
Yeah, I feel like, as I've learned over the years and gotten wiser, and I sit back and I think about the whole picture, I realize now that appearance is very, very, a very main focus. We want everything to look good, everything's perfect, everything's fine, there's not any problems, there's not any issues, and I think, some of that is to not panic the church or the church members, things like that. So yeah, it's very much, things are kept quiet.
Is the way things appear to the church, is that the number one priority?
I would have to say, yeah. If it's not number one, it's definitely very close to the top, but probably number one.
Is this a family trait? Does the rest of the family get involved in the cover-up?
I would say they have to. They have to.
You eventually left, got out. How did that happen?
I just kind of ended up leaving because I ended up needing a break. I needed to step away and back off of everything. And I needed to take time for myself. After all these things that happened, I needed some healing time, I think. And I ended up going back to college and doing some things like that. So I took that time to just pull away from everything. And not the Lord. I made up in my mind that I was not going to backslide. I wasn't going to do anything stupid, anything like that. Because the way I look at it is, it's not God's fault people are crazy. So why would I take that out on God? Why would I hate him or blame him for something? Or why would I blame any other man or anybody like that? No, it was one person that did something. And so I'm not going to take that out on the Lord or anybody else. But I just needed my time away. I didn't particularly really even want to hear Christian music. I didn't really want to hear pastors. I just needed a minute.
And Solid Rock had really been the only church you'd ever known?
Oh, for a long time. For a long time. Now, maybe when I was really little, I had gone to some other smaller churches. I know that I always had a relationship with the Lord from a very young age. I always did. I mean, I was the little girl that would be like, hey, God, you want to go play in the woods with my dog? And that's always, the Lord's always looked out for me. And so, but for a majority of my life, absolutely. That was the main place I went. That was all I knew.
In the beginning of this interview, we talked about your why. And I said we would come back to it. Is there anything else that we should talk about before we get to that you can think of that's kind of been left on the table?
Well, that's hard to say because there's been a lot of things that, have happened. But I would say this is something that I never in a million years, even past that, I never would imagine I would have had to do something like this. I never imagined that things would end up this way. It didn't have to be this way. I never imagined that people were going to be who they are. I never knew. And that's pretty disturbing for me because I lived around everybody and with everybody all the time. And so for me to come to the realization of all the things that have happened and are currently happening, I've had more than one breakdown, crying. And in spite of their popular belief, thinking that I hate them, or that I'm bitter, or angry, or unforgiving, or being revengeful, or trying to destroy the church, or me and other people that I love trying to destroy the church, that's a lie. That's not true. The only reason that I'm speaking out is because there's so many other people that things have happened to, and nobody speaks out because they're too afraid. I was afraid to speak out for a long time. This is even not fun right now, but it's the right thing to do.
You, in the very beginning, stated that you wouldn't be surprised if the number of victims of Lawrence were in the triple digits. Maybe, or high double digits, but certainly fair number of victims. How many young women do you think that Darlene has said, now we'll keep this secret to the grave? How many others have been through this kind of treatment?
Well, at first I thought it was just me. But now I'm learning that it's been several others, at least several others. Some of them I know. Some of them were my friends and I didn't know until they confessed to me a little later. And I cried. I was so mad, finding out. And I realized, you know what? If she would have confronted his butt, sorry for saying that, but before, me, and just told him, gave him an ultimatum, like, you stop this or we're done and you can get out, as hard as that would be. But, many people have to do these kind of things, and the church would have went on. It would have flourished. But if she would have stopped him before me, he would have never got to me. And if she would have stopped him after me, he would have never got to anyone else. And some of these people are people that I love, And so, yeah, I would say there are, I know at least several more that I know of, but I can't think of, it would be numerous people that I would never know. Because, also he traveled a lot. Both him and her, they traveled a lot and preached, in different places. And, him being in horse training and selling, they were both on the road a lot for a long time. So, yeah, that's why I would guess that high of a number, possibly.
It's been difficult, but you're strong. You didn't do stuff stupid, is the words you used. But that's not always the case when somebody's been through the stuff that you've been through. Are there women out there that have been wronged, and some who their lives are a basket case because of Lawrence Bishop?
I would have to guess, yeah. I can't 100% pinpoint it, but I would have to say most definitely, because depending on how much was done to them, how far they may or may not have gone, as far as even themselves, falling prey to this and getting caught up in the power, or, things like that. And then they realized how wrong they were later. But see, by that time that all happens, somebody's even more afraid and they're blaming themselves. So I would have to say that even with how it affected me, if anything worse happened to anybody else, they're most definitely affected emotionally, mentally, maybe some people physically, and it could affect different areas of life forever if somebody doesn't get help for it and healing, counseling, things like that. For sure.
And does Darlene Bishop bear responsibility in this area?
Unfortunately, I don't think so. And it's hard for me to say these things because, again, if she was to see this, I even feel bad for doing it now. Like, I don't want her to think I'm, just doing it out of spite. But the thing is I don't think she's taking responsibility for it.
If she'd spoken up and done something, like you said, confronted, would that have saved a number of women from going through this?
Sure, absolutely. If she would have gave him a strong ultimatum, like, you stop and get some counseling and get delivered, or I'm divorcing you and you're done. You're done preaching, all of it, get out. Yeah, I would say that would have stopped a whole lot of things that continued on.
If Darlene was sitting right there right now, what would you want to say to her?
I would say, and even in light of these recent events with her health issues, I would say to her, it didn't have to be like this. Why? Why did you let all this go on for so long? Why didn't you stop him? You could have stopped him, and it would have that would have probably saved the church. If we're going to talk about saving the church, and, you know, and it may have been hard on the family. I get it. It would have taken some time, because who wants to believe that about their dad, or who wants to, you know, feel that pain? But at the same time, everybody would have been okay. They would have bounced back. And all these things that have snowballed now may not have happened. Because as I'm looking at it now, I'm seeing so many negative and bad things happening. But yeah, I would definitely ask her why. Why did you stop him? Why did you just, you know, yell at him? Why did you just leave it at that? Because you knew he had a problem. And if you would have stopped him before me, he wouldn't have got to me. And if you would have stopped him after me, after I taped him for you, which is what I thought the point was to stop him, he wouldn't have done anything to people after me. You know, and I would tell her, look, I love you, but what you've done isn't right. You know, and even if people looked at things from a legal standpoint, he wasn't reported. He wasn't reported for any of these, you know, sexual assaults or crimes. And, you know, and legally, with, you know, the law and police, things like that, they would look at that as an accessory, an accomplice. She let it go on. She didn't say anything. She didn't stop.
Were any of these women underage?
I would guess yes. Now, I can't 100% say, so I don't want to say anything that's false, but I would say there's definitely a chance of that.
Did Darlene fail you as a pastor?
It's a hard thing to say. In that area, yeah. It was a definite protection fail there. And I guess I feel failed in other areas from her, because all this time and all this preaching, and I'm finding out all these things, and I'm realizing, you know, things that even, you know, she's been saying. And yeah, so definitely, because now I feel like, was all that true? You know, and it leaves me with a trust issue for when I do hear preachers now, because the whole time I'm questioning things in my mind. As far as motive, and are you really believing what you're preaching? Are you really living what you're preaching? Should I be listening to you right now? Because all these years I thought that all the holiness and stuff that was preached, now I'm realizing that I don't know if people were living it.
Thank you. Karen's testimony, pretty powerful, very powerful. And there are others that are coming forward. But I have a quick word that I'd like to say to Jude Hooks. Jude, you've got your whole life ahead of you, son. You've grown up in privilege. You've gone to the best schools, worn the best clothes, the best shoes, and you've had everything going on in your life that would poise you to have a bright and happy future. And the life of privilege that you've lived has been largely, if not solely, provided for by the faithful tithes and offerings and giving of God's people. So the body of Christ, we've made an investment in you, son. And we're not looking to be paid back, but we are looking to be maybe paid forward. And that is, make something of your life. And I have a scripture I want to share with you, Jude. And before I share that scripture, I want to say this. Son, if you continue the kind of behavior that you've engaged in, you're going to go to jail. And if you act on that behavior and what is contained in those threatening text message, you're likely to go to prison. And you may be young and strong and able to handle yourself, but if you go in the next couple of years, you're going to take that pretty boy face with you. That's the way you would be perceived in prison. And you'd spend a whole lot of time trying to protect your assets. You don't want to go there. I have a scripture for you. It's from Judges chapter 6. It's a story of Gideon. Israel was in a place of, they were overcome by their enemies. They were in a bad spot because of sin. The Midianites were really having a heyday with the people of God. But God called Gideon to be a champion and a deliverer to Israel. And the very first assignment that he gave to Gideon was to take your father's young bull and a second bull 7 years old, tear down your father's altar to Baal, cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Listen to this. Then build a proper altar to the Lord your God on top of this stronghold. That's our prayer for you, Jude. Take all this privilege, take all the things that exist in your life right now, and tear down your father's idol. Tear down the Asherah pole and build a proper altar on top of that stronghold, because you're actually what this is all about. You and the generation you represent, that the Lord doesn't want to have to go through and continue these crazy shenanigans and the idolatry and the sin. That's our hope, and that's our prayer for you. Folks, if you would like to support Ohio for Freedom, we certainly could use it, and we want to say thank you to so many people that have been so kind to us. ohioforfreedom@gmail.com. You can find our PayPal link, ohioforfreedom@gmail.com, Zelle. We appreciate you so much. And until next time, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless the state of Ohio, God bless the United States of America and His faithful servants all over the world.